these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The world is waking up, and this is the tipping point.
Gentlemen, here we go. We got a blockbuster crew tonight to talk about some things that are emerging in the world that has truly the world's attention on many levels, many facets. This speed that we are hurtling toward in space, towards zero barrier, this clash of civilizations is absolutely picking up speed. Most of you can see it. A lot of things that we're seeing in the world, in government, global governments, economies, banking, law enforcement, courts, you name it, is being upended piece by piece. I just heard Juan O'Savin the other day talk about over 120,000 infiltrators in our judicial system, in the court system, 120,000 minimum. That's 2,500 criminals into courts per state. You're talking about judges, you're talking about attorneys, anybody that has to do with the whole banking machine called courts, admiralty courts. All these things are finally starting to resonate. I was talking to Ann Vanderseel, visited her the other day, was picking up Cinderella 2.0 down in Florida, found out she's in my backyard where I was there, and we were having the same discussion. These remarkable things that are happening on every level. Most people who are bitching and complaining about where's the arrest, where's that, you have to have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. If you don't, these people can't see these things. We have one of the latest, most tragic shifts in the dynamic of this battle happened just a few days ago. A favorite of many of us, I know Mike Jaco, myself, and certainly Nino Rodriguez and others, are absolutely devastated by the idea that David Wilcock, one of the top ufologists in the world, expert on the pyramids, on sacred geometry, the universe itself, the law of one, go down through the list, one of the most prolific people I've ever met in terms of wisdom, knowledge, study, and the information that guy has dug up in his life, and how he can articulate it in a way that anybody can understand most of the time. I got to say, he does talk over me, over my head, but tragic situation. We've lost him. And of course, you can see who David is. I would just say, salute, my friend, everything you did do, wherever you are right now, whatever base you're on, moon, Mars, who the hell knows, the guys that are, my belief is, protecting you. Hopefully that's all true. That's what I think we're gonna see emerge eventually. But so tonight's broadcast is an impromptu sort of emergency broadcast. We got Mike Jaco in the house. We got Alpha Warrior here. Josh Reed's going to be coming in. I call him my Encyclopedia Brown. That guy knows more shit about everything on Earth than I've ever even heard anybody communicate. But he is certainly one of the best. He'll be here in a few minutes. So we are going to dive into this head first. David Wilcock, big story. Secret space program, emergence, big story. Top scientists in jet propulsion, in aerospace, etc., propulsion technology, 11 or 12 of them either disappeared or have been killed in the last couple of years. Likely David is an example of the latest. These high-level people that know the truth of what this planet has been robbed of and what you've been robbed of, what humanity has been robbed of for all of your life, for generations. But that's coming to an end. It's going to change. And we're here to help spread the word so more people wake up. They'll start demanding zero-point energy on the planet. We'll be demanding sonic technologies on the planet. We'll be demanding anti-gravitic craft It's already on planet. We just don't have it on the planet for we the people. That's what's coming. So let's bring in Alpha Warrior, former Marine, actually current Marine. You're never a former Marine. I should punch myself in the face for saying that, Alpha. What am I thinking? A prolific investigator, detective, expert in search warrants. Beat the shit out of the fumbling, bumbling idiots, the FBI, when they came after him. Buried him. Got people fired at the top of the food chain for coming after a guy who was an expert in areas they couldn't even fathom. Stood his ground, faced bankruptcy and imprisonment, didn't back up 1 inch. Here tonight. And we also have Mike Jaco. All of you know who Mike is as a global wingspan perspective on the planet, off planet. His background is prolific as well. So these guys have the perspective that I look for when I find out what's going on. Guys, what an evolution on our planet right now as this thing is starting to unfold. Let's what do you say, Mike? We jump right into David Wilcock. Let's talk about David's situation, what you learned about that, what you think's really happening here.
Yeah, David, I went to one of his events many years ago. We on the Big Island of Hawaii. He's a great researcher. No one questions him. Great books, fabulous, presenter of information. Did a lot of stuff on Gaia. They loved him on Gaia, and then they had a falling out on Gaia. Some people say he started going downhill after that. Some people say he was, on the outs. You look at his channel, 2-3 years ago, he was getting, couple 300,000 views. You come to current time frame, because I watched him over the years. It seemed to be, maybe going down a little bit. Right? I have to admit that he has been going down, and his views were like 40,000. This is a guy who used to get hundreds of thousands of views. So it seems like he was on a downhill path, and you can kind of see that. I made a comment on it one time, and his the people on his channel kind of went after me a little bit because I was like, he's getting a little lean. So anyway, regardless of whether he was on the downside, it's very suspect to me, the events of him taking his life in front of the police. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe Alpha can give a little bit insight on that because he's got some background there, but it seems really suspect to me. We've seen a lot of this stuff. It's not anything new. I don't know what the death and missing count is now. It's like 13, 15, whatever it is, 17. Yeah, it's like thousands, not just recently, guys. We're going back, 100 years or more. They've been taking down scientists and so forth. Tesla, being one of them, going all the way back to Tesla. They've been controlling this information for a very long time. They being the deep state, they being the Luciferians, whatever you want to call these people that are controlling our planet to the great extent. But we're breaking free from that. And you have, myself, Alpha, you, Scott, we've been through some serious shit. These guys have come after us, tried to take some of our lives, and me multiple times, and Alpha, to try to set you up to take your life in front of your family. Oh, God, these guys are they're horrific. But with the Trump team, things seem to be turning around quite rapidly. Now, I think the reason why a lot of this is coming to the forefront right now is because Trump came out and said that he's going to start revealing, and they don't like that. I can tell you they don't like that because I just mentioned something on Facebook about a guy who was revealing one time, and I said, yeah, it seems like he would have gone through SEAL training, and boy, that just opened up a can of worms for me. They came after me and destroyed my life, tried to kill me several times, and but I'm still here, still fighting, but it's a tough battle. David Wilcock probably had the same kind of stuff going on. I remember several years ago where he was literally crying on air, saying that he had heard that he was supposed to be taken out within the next day or two, and fortunately he continued. But this is the path that many of us have gone through. The reveal of, like you talked about in the beginning, Scott, free energy. The transportation, anti-gravitic, propulsion and all that kind of stuff. All of these scientists we're seeing that are disappearing on a more recent scale are scientists that are involved in that. So this is what we're up against, revealing that, and we're seeing. I've seen a lot of my friends, over the years get taken down. James Rink being the most latest guy that was taken down. I remember going to his events. He would have like a wall of people that had been taken down over the years, mysteriously, if we can say that. But is David part of this, potentially? Was he involved in some activities that were bringing attention to himself? Or was he just, don't talk because we'll take you out type of guy? That's what I think is being, done here. So that's my take on this so far. But I'm observant. I hear a lot of people saying a lot of different things. I think I don't think anybody should discount anything. A lot of people have great research. They talk about certain things. If you don't agree with somebody's point of view, that's dumb. Just be observant. You don't have to get all butthurt about it. Just look at the information and decide on your own. What you think is maybe happened or maybe didn't happen. So that's where I'm at with all this stuff, and I've been that way for years.
Seen you since we've known each other. I guess I'm unmuted now. Finally, I've of course we become great friends. I've observed your work in person. We spent time together. You've been at my house, and you are a guy that even I want to emulate. You give latitude to everybody all the time about everything, and that's how we need to be. Like you said, if somebody has an opinion, and I'm focusing on the Matrix stuff, the Great Awakening stuff. It is stupid when one person says, well, I think this is what happened. Oh, that's bullshit. And then they attack you, right? Yeah. That could be a friend, a family member. And think about this. A human species, sharing with somebody else, here's what I think happened. And because the other person doesn't believe what you believe, they attack you. You're stupid or what. Folks, do you understand why I bring this stuff up all the time? Because this is the war. That's the war. All this other stuff is taking down the architecture. It's the vibrational sequence that we have to build in this world to allow the angelic realm to come in. When you're attacking people just for being who they are every day, what do you think you're doing to the energy field that we're trying to build to attract the type of beings that we want in our life? You're destroying it. Like, what do you care what people think? Just let people be heard, because I know I don't have all the answers. I said forever and ever, hey, I don't know what's going on here. I'm just watching it like the rest of you, trying to figure it out. And I know the same with you, Alpha. You're the same way. We spend enough time together, and you just have that calming, peaceful presence, and you give that kind of latitude. So I respect that tremendously. It's an incredible character trait for both you guys. So what do you think here, Alpha, in all your experience in law enforcement, these kind of situations? What's your idea about David Wilcock?
It's well, one, can you guys hear me? I want to make sure you guys can hear me. Okay, good. It's very unfortunate. I came into him where I knew his face, but didn't realize his name. And then I remember thinking like, oh, that's David Wilcock, because, you've heard the name around, but it was the face and the videos that were out there. And, kind of listening to everybody and the impact that he's had on the community with the information that he put out there. Like that's huge. Talking to two people that are fairly close to him, and they kind of alluded to what Mike was talking about, that things were getting pretty dark for him there, and towards the end of his days, and that's what goes. There is a new version of MK Ultra, and my little one. Hold on, real quick. Sorry, folks.
Bring them in if they have to. That's what being a daddy looks like, folks, right there. That's dad.
She's the boss. Yeah. She's like, you almost done? I'm like, I just started, kid. She's the boss. But
are we there yet?
Are we there yet? But there's a new type of MK Ultra, and it has a lot to do with, the digital footprint that we all have. The smartwatches that we're wearing, the phones that we're on. We've talked about this before on the show. They know what triggers people. Mm-hmm. And add on top of that, the intelligence apparatus, the dark side of the government can peer into your bank accounts They know your private conversations. I mean, granted, when people say, well, we need search warrants in Fourth Amendment. Yes, if you want to present it in court. But don't think for 1 second any of this information is private. All of it. All of it's been tapped into by our intelligence agencies, good and bad. The only thing that search warrants are is it just allows them that if they want to legally bring this into court, that's where it's at. But we know that so imagine you have someone that's in financial, a bad site, there's some relationship issues going on, there's all this, and then you start to flood, their social media. You can drive someone to the point where they're going to, end their own life or do a suicide by law enforcement or something like that. Charlie Kirk's thing, for those that look at it just at the surface level, did the kid operate alone? Well, evidence will probably show that. But when you look into what was being fed into this kid's mind through this new type of MK Ultra, they never abandoned that situation. There's this new way going about it. And it's something that's going to be very hard to prove unless you can find someone that actually left an operational plan out there, or you get a whistleblower that's going to come out and talk about, hey, I was tasked with doing this, or yes, I was part. And that's why, to bring this all full circle into what you're talking about, the deep state and their panic, is people are going to start flipping. And you're going to see arrests, and the purpose of getting people to flip is to get the bigger fish, is to make it to where, evidence is no longer circumstantial, but you have a body, a face, and a voice that can say, yeah, I was a part of that. And that circumstantial evidence isn't circumstantial. That's legitimate evidence. And I think we're going to see that about a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm going to pose this. Sounds a little far out there on this David situation. The protocol that the deep state has had at their fingertips for literally dozens and dozens of years to do things they want to have happen, to create viewpoints or create circumstances to get elicit a response from the people that they want, i.e., let's say we're looking at a good guy operation here on David, whether you have voice to skull technology that can convince him to do this. Any of us that know David know this is the last thing on his ascension track that would get any play at all, even though you have that type of technology. Obviously it's superior to the human's capacity to resist. But what if he was extracted by the good guys? What if, look, the simple fact is, we know that there have been cloning centers that have been seized by U.S. Marines. How about it? Yeah, Joss is pumped now. We're going down that trail. These cloning centers, I got some information from Overwatch. This is a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Eric, Commandant of the Marine Corps, you guys can throw his name out. It's not hitting me, but the general. Anyways, they had commandeered cloning centers in places like Arkansas, one in Alaska, and somewhere else. And he described the copies that they had of different people. Like even General Flynn, they had copies of General Flynn, he said, in there. And Eric Smith is his name, General Eric Smith. And Mike, you probably know that name. I believe it's General Eric Smith, Marine Corps. And so they've been doing this stuff forever. So if you want to take over a black hat operation, kind of like this operation that we've been watching for the last decade, and carry out the same game plan, except you make it work for you, how do we know they didn't put a clone in there and that be the guy who blew his head off so they could extract David into a safe zone? And the world believes, including the dark powers, that this guy off himself, there's one and done, he's out. Those are things that sound crazy, but I'm telling you, in this world, none of this shit's crazy. What these guys are doing today and what we're learning. So my soul doesn't land yet on the fact that he's truly gone or dead. I know what we saw, what we heard, but for whatever reason, I'm not having that knock on that door saying, yeah, this guy's definitely gone. I don't know why. I can't explain it. But if it's there for me, in some type of intuitive capacity, the only explanation I can come up with is, well, maybe that's how that thing actually played out. But anything's possible. I just wanted to throw that out there because we have got to start to be prepared. We got to start thinking outside of the matrix. Everything you believe and know, folks, is not true. It is not complete, not accurate. It's not all true. it's a far bigger stretch to get to that reality. That's why you have to start thinking in ways like this, because there's going to be less shock to the system whenever we start to really find out truly the capacities that these powers have to do what they do on this planet. Anyways, do we still have Josh? Yeah, I think Josh is.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay.
I am definitely here.
There he is.
What's up, everybody? How we
He's on
doing?
the screen. Yeah, he's not on my screen. Anyway, it's good to see you, brother.
Yeah, you guys as well. I was actually looking for a clip. We just, Alpha and I do a show together on Tuesday nights on another channel. And it's called DEFCON 0. And 0 is with it's with a Q at the end, if people understand that. But we had Congressman Tim Burchett on.
Oh, yeah.
And
Good show.
it was during this conversation I was talking about a lot of things coming down the pipe. Number one is when you get into the Epstein files, right now there's a congressional investigation, the release of the Epstein files. The DOJ IG has opened up a probe into the release of the Epstein files. We know Todd Blanche came out and said, oh, it's all closed and done, except for obviously things that are in pending investigation. Pam Bondi was fired. I'm thankful for that. People are like, you white hat. Nope, she was a piece of shit. I think that she was stopping everything from coming out. But I've researched the Epstein files immensely over the last 3 to 4 years and done a lot of deep diving research into this. And one of the things that you start to find is that there is this hidden world of genetic manipulation that has been going on for a long time. All right? And you're talking about cloning. Well, I think that cloning is very, very real. And that Epstein was actually a facilitator of that. Because one of the things that we have to understand is that if you want to do genetic research and if you want to compile information into an artificial intelligence on genetics, well, then you have to collect a massive amount of genetic information, right? Well, what company just went out of business last year? Their board of directors all quit. 23andMe. Who owned that? That was the CEO, Ann Wachowski, who is a sister of Susan Wachowski, who was married to Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Alphabet and Google. Well, that's kind of interesting because didn't Google just come out with Alpha Genome just a few months ago? And what is Alpha Genome? It comes out of Google's DeepMind or quantum AI that they've been operating with. I got a friend that works over there, and he's been over the last 5 years aggregating biomedical and genetic information into quantum AI, DeepMind, for the Alpha Genome Project. Now, this is where it gets interesting because you got to ask, where did they get the genetic information from, right? Well, when you go back to Epstein, most of us think that hey, he was, they were utilizing these children for child ritualistic sacrifice and child sex trafficking. But you're talking 8 million children a year go missing from the world. That's 1% of the global population, or no, maybe 0.1%, 0.1%. The global population goes missing each year. That's a little too much for just child sex trafficking. We know those numbers. So I started looking into this and I said, well, wait a minute. Epstein was part owner of two companies, the Southern Trust Company and the New Albany Company. The New Albany Company, he ran with a guy by the name of Lex Wexner, right? Well, the New Albany Company was headquartered in the Caribbean on an island owned by Google. Not only that, is Google operated a DeepMind AI data center on the island, right next to the New Albany Company. Now, what did the New Albany Company and the Southern Trust Company, formed in 2012 and 2014 respectively, what did they do? DNA mining. They would go into third world countries, they would build a school just like Oprah and all the Hollywood stars. They go to Africa, they go to South America, they build the school, and then to get access to that school, you have to give up your genetic information every month, and then you have to give your biometric information. They would take that and they would sell it off to these big companies. Well, here's the thing is, within a lot of these communities, these schools were built, children went missing. Children are going missing all the time. Well, let me ask you this, is if you're big pharma or big tech and you're trying to build an artificial intelligence that's going to be producing designer DNA to produce perfect clones or to even genetic modify yourself, can you use old guy DNA like us? No, you have too much methylation. You have too much breakdown in that DNA. You have to use a DNA that hasn't gone through the iterations of age and life, like a child's DNA. And
I'll have that clip from Tim Burchett when you want it, Josh.
Okay. And so, well, this is going to be really important here in a second once I come to the point here, is the majority of these children that are going missing are being moved into genetic research facilities and offshoot locations. And I want you to think about this. 72 level 4 biolabs in just Ukraine. We have them in Thailand, we have them in South America, we have them in Central America, and so there's hundreds of these across the world. Now, when Vladimir Putin said that he was doing a special military operation in Ukraine, in the Donbass region, what was the reason for that? Because the native Russian Slavic people in the eastern part of Ukraine, which share DNA profiles with Russian people, had over 14,500 of them killed by the Azov battalion within a 3-year period. And Russia pleaded with Ukraine to stop it. But how were they being killed? Biowarfare. They were taking people, children were disappearing, and they were utilizing and testing various different biogenetic drugs on these children. And now you have 72 biolabs. Where was the first place that Putin went in? He went in and shut down the biolabs. He went down and shut down Chernobyl and Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Well, why is that? Because that's where these facilities were running out of. That's where these 72 biolabs come into play. And so what you have is you have off-the-grid genetic research that is being done in these various, what I call autonomous zones. Third world countries that nobody in the global community even gives a crap about, that you can go out there, you can do genetic research, and nobody's going to say anything because you got all the governments paid off, you got all the countries surrounding you paid off, you can bring all of these children in, and then I also believe that they're doing it in DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and I also believe that the reason the Epstein files isn't being released is because of this connectivity, because a lot of the children that he was trafficking was not just for U.S. biopharma and U.S. tech companies, but for the United States government. Play the clip.
If you guys want to bring it up, I'll hit play.
Of some very...
No, it's not playing the volume.
It was playing the volume.
Okay. All right, my apologies. Let me do it again.
Of some very, how shall I say, it's a very slippery slope of genetic altering being done in this country, possibly by our federal government. I'm going to just leave it at that. And I get into these meetings and then I'll say, wait a minute, what did they just say? And I have to go back and just, wait a minute, we weren't talking about that. What is this? And I'm very cautious of that. And I just think there's a lot of evil in this world, and a lot of that evil is within our own government.
Yeah, well, and money and power do that too. And there you have it. Tim Burchett prefaced that by saying that I don't know how to say this. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to say something illegal here. But he kind of stuttered over it a minute, and then he said that there's genetic experiment, that I believe there is genetic experimentation being done by our government. Now, what does he mean by that? I think what this goes into, and Jacob probably could speak on this, is super soldiers, genetic and clones of super soldiers. You have integration with artificial intelligence is a big part of even what the Trump administration is doing. And that's a whole different discussion of why they're doing that, because of artificial super intelligence. But, then you got people like Dr. David Sinclair, Harvard University. They've cured aging. You have them curing blindness right now in an FDA trial, utilizing the same technology that they're going to do to cure aging. And so within the next 5 years, you're going to see that coming to market. It'll be a cocktail that you drink. And how do they do it? They utilize a clone of your stem cells in an embryo. So they fertilize an embryo. They produce a clone of you at about 2 weeks old that just continuously produces stem cells. And then they fix it with this OSK therapy. And then they inject that they give it into the cocktail, and it goes into the various different parts of your body and then begins healing and reversing aging. Mm-hmm. So we are at this point of like biotechnical revolution. But here's the thing, is it's been around for a while. It's been around for a minimum of the last 20 years. We had the Monroe Institute documents that came out from the 1970s, and the federal government, what they were doing with that, studying consciousness and the source of consciousness. And people were like, oh my God, they were studying consciousness in Project Stargate and remote viewing and psychics. And you don't think that they were studying biology and cloning and DNA? This is why you've never seen any declassified documents from that stuff, is because they're still doing it and it's still classified.
Yeah, it's all about taking down the secret space program stuff that's already out there. They're trying to move in that direction. The cloning stuff is like just one aspect that we're 100 years more advanced than what we're seeing in these, he's slowly revealing biotech labs that Tim Burchett was talking about. He's exposed to it. He said that if the United States was exposed to what he's seen, it probably just shut down the whole country. That's and he's not seeing it all. There's no way he's seeing it all, because we're talking 100 years ahead. Now we go all the way back to the Nazis in Germany, even into Brazil in the 1800s. Germans were in Brazil in the 1800s, and Juan O'Saven was on my show last night talking about this. Super advanced technology all the way back, back then, that the Germans were into. And of course, we defeated them, or so we thought, in Germany. And they were right on the verge of the atomic bomb. If it wasn't for special forces going into, I think it was Norway, and taking down their heavy water plant, blowing it up, they would have had the atomic bomb. Now they had the V1 and the V2 rockets, which was V1 was the first cruise missile, V2 was the first ballistic missile. So they were incredibly advanced. In March of 1945, they launched jets against bombers and Tuskegee airmen, who shot down 3 of those jets. So with the P-51, because as they banked, they'd slow down. The P-51s were fast and very maneuverable, and they got in and shot down 3 of those jets. So they're super advanced. And of course, we had the fleet that went down to Antarctica, where they ran to, and they got spanked. They had to hightail it out of there because they had the high-tech direct energy weapon, flying saucers that came in, basically cut ships in half and cut down aircraft and all kind of crazy stuff. So they had to get out of there. And then they came to the White House and came into the White House and said, okay, we're in control. But eventually we got to the point where we advanced our technology, and at this point, in some areas, we're more advanced than they are, they being the Nazis, the Draco reptilians, and all that crazy stuff, So a lot of people don't go down those rabbit holes, but we do. We've been talking about it for a long time. And, it's, to us, it's like, it's common knowledge and a talking point that we have great conversations over, but still people are incredibly unaware of it.
There's a lot, when to go back to the scientists, the dead and the missing, it's something the detective side of me just never leaves. And this is not, random. I think, it's safe to say that. And you have another, I think 8 or 9 being reported out of China. And there's some interesting things on their backgrounds that are coming out now. But I'm like, well, what, how do you establish motive? Well, you got to find, if there's linkages between them. And so as I started diving into some of them to see some of the less talked about, but special programs and projects that they're a part of, very interesting stuff in there. And there's a lot, so I won't highlight all of them, but I'll just go through a few for each just to give you guys some interesting stuff here. So Amy Eskrich, you guys have heard her. She's one that's dead. She was a chairman, president, co-founder of the Institute for Exotic Science. The ones that you have to dig to find, and I know Josh won't like this first word, but anti-gravity, exotic propulsion, breakthrough physics. I found that very interesting. Next one, Michael David Hicks, dead, NASA JPL, research scientist, planetary scientist, planetary defense and asteroid threat monitoring, part of DART. I found that very interesting. Frank Werner Maywald, if I said that right, he's also dead. Also NASA JPL, principal researcher, instrument development manager, space sensors, life detection adjacent technology. Next one, Anthony Tony Chavez, former Los Alamos National Laboratory employee, reported retired lab worker, construction foreman there. Nuclear lab proximity is what came back to him. His was a little bit harder. Next one, Monica Jacinto Reza. She's reported as missing, and Chavez is missing, not dead. Aerospace engineer for her, director of materials and processing at NASA JPL. Also, advanced propulsion, rocket superalloys, and AFRL overlap is what she has. And then Melissa Shirley Kaisis, was an administrative worker and an administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, sensitive lab administration. She was also proximity to some type of verified science project. It didn't give a whole lot. It just said it was adjacent to things that had to do with UAPs and drones. But like I said, that one requires more digging. Stephen Abel Garcia, government, and he's missing. Government contractor, property custodian at Kansas City National Security Campus facility in Albuquerque. Nuclear weapons component infrastructure for him. And then Nuno Luriero, he's reported as dead. He's the MIT professor of physics and nuclear science engineering, director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. And some of the special projects he had was fusion energy, plasma physics, and quantum simulation. Next one is Carl Grillmer, reported as dead. Caltech IPAC astronomer, astrophysicist. Dark matter, exoplanets, and near-Earth object monitoring were some of the special ones that he was tied into. William Neil McCaslin, and I know Josh can talk a lot about this guy. He's reported as missing. Retired U.S. Air Force Major General, former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory. Biggest classified program for him was UFO speculation, or it was suspected as UFO. But some of the ones that were verified were AFRL, NRO-linked space rolls, GPS, space-based lasers, special programs, and massive R&D portfolios that are hard to find information about. And then the last one here is Jason R. Thomas. He's reported as missing. Assistant Director of Chemical Biology at Novotara's pharmaceutical researcher. And the main things for him was advanced biotech cancer therapeutics. And so when you look at some of the not so popular but really special programs, that's interesting. As I started to look into the China guys, I only was able to get to one, and his name is, I'll do my best to say this, Feng Yargil. He died in a car crash, and his specialty, he was military, and his specialty was conflict simulation with Taiwan. So I don't find these things as random. And I know both China hasn't, but the U.S. has come out and said, Trump says it's a serious matter. I hope it's not a coincidence. If we were taking out each other's top targets, neither country's ever going to admit that. But I wonder if maybe China was attacking our scientists, and maybe now we're doing it back. I don't know.
So, there's a lot to say on all that. Amy Eskridge, I think that she was targeted not by our government or a foreign government. I think that this was absolutely the military-industrial complex. And there's a level of thinking that you have to understand with this, is that for the last 100 years, they've been in control of this from the Eisenhower days. And the reason that I believe a lot of this technology was put deep in the military-industrial complex was actually to hide it from the globalists, from the liberal New World Order. And the reason I say that is because if they had this technology, if the liberal New World Order had this technology, we'd already be enslaved, we'd already be dead, 85% of the population would be eliminated, right? And so there's a mechanism that's holding this technology away from them. This is why Bill Clinton, Podesta, Obama, Jake Sullivan have all been trying to get this stuff out of the special access programs. And I was telling Alpha about this the other day. It's like, I know a few different generals, and there's a general out there that worked within these fields, and he gave me a wink when I said this, right? But that in the 1940s, Eisenhower basically separated this stuff and put it deep within the corporate infrastructure of the military-industrial complex so that these people could not get a hold of it. But over the last 80 years, what happens? They advance the technology. They learn the new physics. They develop new breakthrough technology that could save the planet, hyperspace travel, free energy. But here's the thing, is they can't just release that to the world. The world would be screwed up just like we were when this piece of reverse engineered technology, was released to the world. And so when you start to think, is they have the next 250 to 300 years of technological evolution at their fingertips, which means that they have corporate survivability for the next 250 years. Now, do you think that they're going to let some scientist or some engineer come out and discover one of the things that's going to lead to one of their breakthrough technologies that they hold the patents for, that the taxpayers funded? No. So they go out there and eliminate them. This is why I think that they took out Amy Eskridge. But there's one more person that was not named in any of this. And I'm surprised nobody's been bringing up his name. And this is actually something that we talked about on a roundtable about all of this. Matthew Leifelsberger. He served 19 years in the United States Army. He was a Green Beret and had been a member of various different Special Forces units over the course of his career. So Matt came out and claimed that he was part of a special access program working out of Germany on remote and autonomous systems manager. And he was working on anti-gravitic drones that were being utilized by the United States military. And if people remember what happened on January 1st, 2025, Matthew Leifelsberger was in a Cybertruck in front of Trump Plaza Hotel Casino in Las Vegas, and it blew up. And he died in it, but they said that he took his own life right before that happened. Well, the interesting thing is they provide a manifesto that they found on his phone. His Signal password had changed moments after his death, which was kind of odd. In his manifesto, he's like, the country's going in the wrong direction. But what they didn't know is through an anonymous email he had sent Sean Ryan and a few other people, his own variation of the story of what happened. He came home on leave for Christmas from Germany to Colorado. He's in Colorado Springs, and somebody tried to kidnap him. And he's like, that was government. That was a spec ops team. Someone just tried to kidnap me. What the hell's going on here? He goes out there, purchases a gun, goes out there, gets a rental car, a Cybertruck. He's going to go to Mexico. And he's like, in this manifesto, he says, I don't know if it's because of a 2019 event where civilians were killed that I was told to cover up, if that was one of the reasons why, or it's because of the project that I'm working on right now that's connected to the New Jersey drones or anti-gravitic drones. China and the U.S. have this technology, but we have no defense to them. And what happened? He goes, I fear for my life from our own government. And what do we think happened? We think that some clandestine group in the government remote detonated the bomb in his vehicle before he could get out. I think that he was trying to get the Trump Casino Hotel because he was going to get out of the vehicle, blow it up when nobody was there. Then the news and the law enforcement comes in, and because it's nationally known now, he can tell his story. And that would ensure his protection. But instead, they killed him before he had the chance to do that. So he's another one I think that should be added to this list because he was trying to tell us all what was actually happening here.
As you guys were talking a bit earlier, I was thinking about back in the mid-90s, James Woolsey was the CIA director under Clinton for a couple of years. And he publicly stated, he said, if you people knew what I know, you'd probably never go sleep at night again. And that is probably, that was before the emergence or the momentum that was picked up by the SAPs coming out, Secret Space Program guys coming out and blowing the whistle. You know, you had your general ufology kind of information coming out, but when you start getting into the high-level stuff, the off-planet stuff, and the technologies, it wasn't widely disseminated like it is today. That probably started, I noticed, around 2015, 2016, picked up speed. But just that a CIA director would say, literally, you'd be shitting your pants trying to get to sleep at night if you knew everything that I know. Imagine what these guys have seen and what they know. And I don't know how this is seeded into humanity in a way that can keep the masses from hitting the shockwave, you know, just and imploding psychologically. We've heard this before, that specifically on religion itself, when they have a real reveal of high level, you know, higher density non-terrestrials presented somehow to humanity, to the earth, on the planet, by governments or whatever, that is going to put people in bed for 3 weeks at a time. Massive depression. Everything they've ever learned is an absolute, specifically religion. I believe that's what's going to fracture the grip. I'm not talking about spirituality. I'm not talking about connection to source. I'm not talking about, you know, the idea that Christ walked the planet, and it's illegitimate. It's all legitimate. In fact, it's what's illegitimate about it is the full scope of Christ's message and his life has been scrubbed and whitewashed. So they had the capacity to do this to us because we obviously, if we emulated Christ's life in what he was trying to teach us, what was he trying to teach us? The quantum physical realm, working in concert with the quantum physical realm of all creation. So I think it's going to be critically important, but I can't see in my mind what it's going to look like. Like, what do these guys have on deck to bring us to this place to where we now have legitimate visual proof, the collaboration of global governments revealing this to the world that, you know, here's one of them, here's the Nordic, here's, you know, whatever, and what that looks like. But the fact is, I believe, because the psychological stability of humanity in general is relatively weak, let's face it.
Agreed.
And I just think is going to be a massive fracture. Now, I know these guys have thought this thing through probably for decades, and they have a great answer for it, but I still wonder what that could be.
So this is actually something that I've thought about and researched as well. And I think that what is going to happen, and I authored a blog on my Substack and on my X called The 500-Year Leap. And the 500-year leap is how technology is going to radically evolve exponentially. 500 years, if you can imagine what technology is going to be like in 500 years, in the next 20 years, right? And how does this happen? Well, this happens because of artificial superintelligence. If people want to understand the global geopolitical situation right now, why is Donald Trump in Iran and all this stuff? It's about reallocation of global energy and assets and accessibility to those corridors of energy and resources. It's all about that. Why? Because artificial intelligence has three primary foundations: data, computation, and energy. If you control the energy, you control artificial intelligence, and China was kicking our ass. And if China achieved artificial superintelligence before us, we all lost. America becomes farmland and we become slaves or dead. And so Trump understands this, and this is why he's taken these steps to ensure that we win this race to artificial superintelligence. But there's more to it. Then you have $17 trillion of investment capital that's flowing into the United States that's going to build out the infrastructure for it. But then about 3 months ago, the Trump administration released something known as the Genesis mission. And I can't believe more people haven't picked up on this, but the Genesis mission is going to utilize government-operated artificial intelligence that are linked up with all of the jet propulsion laboratories of the National Institutes of Health. It's going to be linked into the Department of Energy, the Patent Office, and it's going to compile all the research data, all the papers written, all of the evidence that's been taken from experimentation over the last 50 years, and it's going to compile it into an artificial intelligence. And then they have 40,000 scientists in various different disciplines coming in, and from that, they're going to innovate. So you ask, how is the disclosure going to happen? It's not going to be what we think it is. I think what they're going to do is they're going to feed this information directly into the AI. The AI is going to figure out the new science, the new physics. It's going to start putting it out there. These scientists, 40,000 of them, will begin to innovate from that information coming from SAP programs that is released into this AI. And guess what? All of the evil that was done by these black organizations, by these black projects over the last 100 years is all going to be covered up, and you're never going to know about any of it because none of it's going to ever come up because it cannot bring a liability to the government. Instead, it's going to leak out through the Genesis mission, through artificial superintelligence, and AI will be utilized as the mechanism to begin progressing the world to where we should be the next 500 years of technology as well. And this is how the ET part actually comes in. I wrote another blog about this called First Contact. And we all know kind of the Star Trek perspective of the Prime Directive and First Contact. The Prime Directive is you don't get involved with developing civilization because they can harm themselves with the technology or they can harm other people. But also, when they do develop a certain level of technology, faster than light travel, you go in there and you introduce yourself. And you don't introduce yourself and invite them to the universe because you're friendly. You do that because you don't want them going out there and interfering with other advancing civilizations and populations of other planets or waging war with everybody. So you have this idea that it's always been faster than light technology is that point. Well, no. How about artificial superintelligence? Because artificial superintelligence, if left unchecked, can evolve to the point where it destroys us. It develops faster than light technology. It takes off and it starts conquering other civilizations in the galaxy. So ASI becomes one of those technologies that primers up for first contact. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. We'll be at ASI within the next 3 years, which means that we could potentially see first contact. And I mean, first contact, quote unquote, because we all know contact's already been made. It's already been planned out. You could even go back to the Galactic Federation, Trump, Jaime Hashem, the 4-star general from the IDF, who is in charge of their space intelligence. Talk about Trump meeting with the Galactic Federation in 2020, and he wanted to release their existence to the world before the 2020 election. He was told, no, humanity's not ready yet. They have to obtain certain milestones. And I think that this is what Trump is working for, to get all of that set up so he can be the one to release this to the world, because Trump is all about his legacy.
Well, you know, they show us what they have, and it's part of their thing. They show us what they have so they don't have karma for it. I remember as a little boy, I was born in 1960, and there was this one show called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. And this was a submarine, a nuclear submarine at the time, experimental submarine, and it had like a flying saucer that came out of it, and it would fly in the water, and it would fly in the air, and then go back into the water. And so they're showing us this technology. And I know Tim Burchett on your show, he talked about an admiral that was confided to him that they had a football-sized vehicle, underwater vehicle, that was going 200 miles an hour underwater, and then would go, into the air and all kind of crazy stuff. So these technologies are out there. It is a slow reveal, which I think needs to pick up speed, because we're way behind, what we should be. We should have the free energy systems that are absolutely out there. I was listening to a show yesterday by David Sarita, and he was involved in some of these systems, and they were trying to bring him out, and all the people that were involved in it, they were trying to fund it, were dying, were being killed, murdered, and all kind of crazy stuff. So they didn't want it to come out all the way back then, and we're talking back in the 80s and 90s, so they were trying to get this free energy systems out, free energy to the point where you could have a nuclear battery that would last 10,000 years. Imagine having that in a Tesla. You wouldn't have to recharge. You drive all over the country wherever you wanted, or drive from Mexico up to Trump's tower. I think that guy was already dead. I think they already killed him and drove that thing in there. But
possibly,
yeah. So I can't imagine him catching himself on fire. Wow.
Yeah, Admiral, I think it was Admiral Golat that said that to him. What he was talking about is actually from the SOSUS project. If people don't know, United States Navy in the 1970s provided a program called SOSUS, and it's sound surveillance system. And there are these massive underwater panels, and they had ships just spreading all throughout the ocean that would drop these panels. Now, my buddy that I was actually on my first ship when I got there in 2004, my buddy actually worked on that project. He was one of the guys that operated the sonar panels and watched all of these things. And he said this was a highly classified project. And he goes, he kind of explained it like this. He's like, people think that it's just like a few acoustic arrays. No, we spread this all throughout the ocean, every damn place and chance that we had. And they're interconnected through acoustic vibration. So they pick it up and they transfer that to the panel that they have. And he said that they detected things that were moving hundreds, thousands of miles per hour underwater, knots underwater. And he said we'd have no idea what it is, and there's no way to tell because it's all sonar, so you're getting sound vibrations. But yeah, there's definitely something under the ocean.
Oh yeah, and that's also was in that show too. They were going to deep underground bases that aliens had. So it was revealing all that information. It's awesome. I loved it.
Did we lose Scott? Or is it just my screen?
There's some weird stuff happening. Can you guys even hear my voice over there?
We can.
Hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go. That's the only thing that matters. Yeah, you can keep the screen black. So I'm going to throw a question at you, and I do want to get into Iran a little bit in the Middle East situation. I think we've kind of walked through it, a lot of us, on exactly what's really happening there. But here's something that somebody threw out of me. We talked about what government's going to look like in the future. Government versus governance. And somebody posed this, that it's very possible, because of the advancement of this AI, and that we would have a benevolent AI governance mechanism whereby we would eliminate 90% of all the people that are in government, because they're all corrupt. I mean, let's face it, all over the country. Nothing but corruption. How do you clean this out? Is there something that can be driven in an AI fashion to keep humanity inside the guardrails of an upper density frequency to help us with that transcendental leap? Or is it just going to be the complete dissolution of federal power and federal infrastructure back to the states, get back to the original republic, and have smaller government all the way around? But do you guys see AI being any type of guardrail inside of the future of government? Because we know government in itself globally does not work. Because what it does, it's a breeding ground for corruption. And so this system can't possibly continue on, because we're going to always get the same results. But what is the answer?
Well, I can tell you through firsthand knowledge that it's absolutely being utilized. Two different people that I know that are working on projects, and you're back, just so you know, we see that pretty face again. One of my partners that reached out to me, and he was, when we would do these investigations, like in the movies, they show the yarn board, a mugshot here, and the string goes back and forth, right? Well, they'll still exist, but not with yarn. It's a lot of times it's a huge wall that's made, or it's a huge digital file, and you'll have a whole team of detectives. Maybe you have somewhere between like 6 and maybe 10 detectives that are working on this operation. And to put this together, you're talking several weeks, if not months, to get all this data that's there. He told me they gave him access to a beta AI program from the government. And he used that to create one of these things. He goes, dude, you know how fast I did that in? He did it in less than 2 hours by himself. So they're incorporating this technology already in at least the investigative apparatus part of what our government's working on. And again, if they're calling it beta, it's how many years have they had it? And now they're just walking it slowly into the atmosphere of these guys. So if that's the case, I absolutely think it's going to be a part of the government. It's how do they sell it to us so that we say, yeah, we're okay with it.
That's the thing. That's because it's going to be it's going to be very suspect, I think, for a long time, unless they can prove to us there's something that would be. I mean, you're talking about disclosure and exposure of the Galactic Federation. I think that's probably the only entity in the universe near us that we can trust that can give us that kind of guidance system. But again, I think it's anybody's guess how that looks, how it works. But I do believe there's something coming that's going to strip away the idea of governments worldwide. and it seems to me like New World Order is not a good word to use, but there is a New World Order where the entire planet is operating on a benevolent frequency, and whatever projection that is, whether it's something physical, mechanical, metaphysical, who knows? There's got to be something that shifts. It's like what I said earlier in these comments about the thought process that we have. Somebody has an opinion or idea on what happened to Epstein, what happened to Wilcock, and they propose it, and somebody else says that's stupid, you're wrong, you're whatever. That whole mindset, that dark low energy vibration, something has to fracture that, because yeah, Josh, I believe you technologically we're going to make this unbelievable leap, 500-year leap in a period of 20 years or a decade or whatever, but on the human level, on the spiritual level, what is the perpetuator of that? What's the ignition point of that?
On the human level, you have to be able to control the narrative. If you don't control the narrative and you have the deep state apparatus that has their talking heads that are out there, they're going to manipulate everything like they've done. No matter what choice Trump would have made with Iran, if he withdraws, he's quit. He's a paper tiger, as one of the guys would call him. If he engages, he's a tyrant. That's he's the Antichrist. So as long as that weapon exists for the deep state, they're not going to do the disclosure yet. And so a marker to disclosures that are coming is when they start to take down that apparatus. And we just saw a huge pop flare from this administration that we're coming into that position. And that's with the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Because what are people finding out? All of a sudden, there's these allegations of funding going into this podcast or this podcaster. I was talking with Josh, already found a connection with the Southern Poverty Center and the Lincoln Project. And why does that matter? Because you can connect the Lincoln Project to the sedition hunters. And I got a bone to pick with those
not
guys.
only that, I mean, they're also infiltrating and funding the KKK, right and left-wing radical organizations. And they were funding the events that these radical organizations were going to attend where people would die. And then they're going out there and saying, see, we need to change the laws. But who was funding them is where it gets interesting, because you have the Open Society Foundation and all of this stuff. And I think that you're right, Alpha, is you have to change the constructed narrative within the world before you can really move towards this. And this is why I think Trump is playing coy with it all. Like, I don't believe in that stuff, but we can put it all out there and we'll see about this.
He's turning everybody into a yo-yo. I mean, he'll come out and make one statement: I'm going to destroy a whole civilization. Now, the vast majority of us knew that he's a businessman. That was a tool to bring negotiations to the table. But then on the other hand, 2 days ago, they asked him, would you ever use a nuclear weapon on Iran? He's like, oh, God, no. Who would ever do something like that? That's crazy. And it's just like, you can see how he makes people abandon their principles on what they stand by, because if they were against it then, but then they're against it now. And what he's doing is, and this goes back to the move that he did, what I consider phase one of between 2015 when he announced his presidency to when he won, when he did legitimize the mainstream media. Over the course of the last, less than 10 years, what did that Mockingbird apparatus do? It rebranded itself with new faces into the alt media world, whether it was Substacks or podcasts, it came there. So what does Trump have to do now before this next phase, which is going to move us into things? He got to identify them again. And it's not beside me that a day after the Southern Poverty Law Center gets indicted, we see certain people that are taking off to Italy and saying, hey, I'm taking a hiatus from doing podcasts. And why is Italy important? Well, that goes back to Operation Gladio. That's where it was born. And what does Operation Gladio have a lot to do with regime changes all over the world, which is what's been happening here in this country. And if anybody's ever studied the Albert Einstein Institute and the regime changes they did all over the world, my opinion is that the Southern Poverty Law Center was that here in our states. And so seeing this administration going after them tells me that they are now taking down the voices of the Mockingbird media. And what I would anticipate is going to happen after these voices are all taken down is you're going to see the repeal of the Smith Modernization Act.
Yeah, the narrative is closely watched. So they see how the narrative runs, and the Trump White Hat team, whatever, they'll pull back on they'll pull back on moving us forward if the narrative gets taken the wrong way to a great extent. Now, I think that we're looking at Artemis. A lot of people looked at Artemis and thought it was like a complete and total joke. I think we're basically moving into a new phase of the space program. We lost a whole generation because of disinformation, and they came in and hijacked the system and so forth on purpose. There were some good things that happened during the Apollo missions and so forth, but there was some bullshit that happened too. So now we're moving into a new realm of that. But you look at the narrative on that, and people are unbelievably negative on that. So we have to watch again, like we started in the beginning of our show. Keep an open mind, all right? Because I can tell you, and I think everyone here is in agreement, that we're out there in space massively.
The assets that are off planet probably match the assets that are at least surface on the planet, if not underground as well. But positive in this pushback on Artemis and people simply not believing. What is a positive? Because generally the public no longer trusts government. They bullshit about everything, and now we have people are finally even in cases where there's legitimacy. The great thing is they're still questioning legitimacy from the people that they've always believed were working toward our best ends as a human species, which is absurd. It's always been our demise. So there's upside, downside. The upside is I'd rather them going against the things that are true and real, because they'll learn that truth. But at least they're saying, I don't believe anything you guys are putting out anymore. Yeah, that's a good sign.
And within the within the constructed narrative, one of the things that they do is they plant the seeds within the subconscious mind, and they do this through controlled dissemination of information. For people out there, so I think that there's two great shows that actually did this. One of them is the newest Battlestar Galactica that came out in like 2005, and this is about humanity that exists out in the stars around 12 planets, and they develop AI, and AI goes to war with them, eliminates all of them. There's 39,000 left, and they seek a new home, the 13th colony. Right, the 12 clans. They had the 12 colonies, but there's a mystery 13th colony or the 13th clan, and it was called Earth. And they sought Earth, and at the end, Earth was destroyed, and so they find a new planet, and they call this one Earth. And there's an early hominid species on the planet, and they said, hey, we can breed with them and rebuild our population. And then it fast forward 50,000 years into the future to the current day. And so obviously we start to look at that as like, whoa, is this like ideals of a past civilization that we might have been part of? But the other one is the most important, I think, is because you had the movie Stargate that came out in like 1998. And they wanted to make a show out of it. And the Sci-Fi Channel is the one that brought this up, and they needed to get some producers for the show, and they needed to bring fun money into it. And one of the people that they went to was the United States Air Force. And the reason is because they were going to use Cheyenne Mountain, and if you remember back in the day with the military uniforms, the military uniforms on movies had to be slightly just off. They didn't want them using them, but the Air Force came out and said, no, you can use Cheyenne Mountain, you can talk about it, this is how we all work. And they actually gave representatives of the United States Air Force to them for doing the show to like kind of make sure that they had everything all correct, as well as the Air Force actually funded it. Now, here's the interesting part, is they asked for one small change, is that instead of a gray alien as the evil one, they wanted it to be a serpent-style reptile that goes in through your neck or your eye and wraps around your spinal cord and suppresses your consciousness, and they were the gods called the Goa'uld. They were the gods of the ancient world. And they obviously made the changes, and you had Stargate SG-1 that came out. And I think that our current space program is probably very similar to what that show tells us. At least that's what I think. Now, do I think that it's that it could be a lot less? I do think it could be a lot less. I think that we could just be on the moon and Mars. I think that we might be, intersolar. And that we have things that can go pretty damn fast and we can get to places. I know we're on the moon. I mean, Dan Driscoll, the Secretary of the Army, last year during the 250th birthday of the U.S. Army said, I just talked to a soldier who's an astronaut on the moon. Well, that's why we haven't had any Apollo missions since the 70s, because it went 100% military. That's why all the people that proclaimed to go to the moon were military. They were really going there, but what you were watching was in a Hollywood basement. And what was actually happening was military missions launched from Kwajalein Atoll, from the 3 different launch pads that they have there, shooting men into the moon and building a military base out there with micronuclear reactors that's been operating since the mid-70s. And we have a whole defense infrastructure up there, but you can't just come out and tell people that. But now that technology's finally catching up with that, you have to kind of go through the phases of like, well, we're going to go up there. We're going to do some missions. We're going to throw some stuff up there, concrete. We're going to build out. And then you're going to get up there and you're going to be like, oh, go tour the military base on the moon. You're like, this shit looks old. It looks like it's from the 70s. And they'll be like, no, this is new, man. This is new. Right? Like I think that's kind of how it's going to go. You're muted, Scott.
I guess I'm muted again.
There it is.
I have Lisa mute me in and out because I got air conditioning blowing here. It's a bit loud. I forgot my point. That wasn't even a rabbit that was that far looking up at the air conditioning. I forget. I just totally forgot the point, Josh. I was going to jump off.
Moon bases.
Already there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like the Space Force idea.
We're sliding into it again.
What's that?
We're sliding the consciousness of humanity back into that again.
Yeah, I think
might be fake
the
shit.
idea that Space Force was put out there for one reason. You have to explain to people now that these this high-level off-planet assets have been seized, and the world knows how they've been seized, from who and why, they would explode because what we've been robbed of. But if you now show this particular whatever craft infrastructure and say this is part of Space Force, people will be the opposite. Yeah, man, check it out. Look what Space Force is doing. Right? What a better way to capture and encapsulate a message that people and a pill people can swallow rather than tell them the truth. So as soon as he said Space Force, I said, This is the first step of disclosure. They're going to put all this stuff under the umbrella, make it look like, hey, we have this powerful new agency called Space Force. Look at the shit our scientists built, our engineers built, when it's been around for 70, 80 years. So yeah, but the public's not going to look at it, Josh, and say, hey, that looks like it's from the 70s. They'll be so pumped up that we're going into the galactic era. They'll be like, wow, that's awesome. That's a Fred Flintstone mobile, but man, that thing looks good. Right.
Well, when you go in there and there's a placard at the base of the Army base on the moon, and it says, established 1974, special thanks to the Freemasons and Martin Marietta, then you know there's probably something up here.
So you're going to talk about Iran?
Yeah, what's happening in the last week? What are you guys seeing outside, of course, the same lunatics in media in the White House or out in the streets jumping Trump for every single move he's making, not understanding what's going on? What's the latest evolution in that phase of Iran?
Yeah,
we're just
so
building up to like hammer the shit out of them so fast and so quick. It's going to make everybody's head spin.
Well,
it still will take weeks, maybe months, but it's gonna happen.
100%, and we have the largest naval presence since the Gulf War in the Middle East right now. And one of the things that we see is a confirmation on things that we've all been talking about is that there's two power factions in Iran. You have the IRGC power faction. It's interesting that they don't talk about the clergy or the mullahs anymore. It's the IRGC power faction. And then you have the civilian power faction. And you've noticed that Trump is only acknowledging the civilian power faction. When J.D. Vance went to Islamabad a few weekends ago, he met with the civilian counterparts, and then you heard the news that other members of the IRGC had arrived to do the negotiations, and then J.D. Vance left the next day. And the reason he left is because he's not negotiating with them. He doesn't want to negotiate with them, that they're on completely different ideas of terms. And really, that was a test by Trump to see who was the controlling power faction. And once they realized that it was the IRGC, this is when the naval blockade went into play. And with the naval blockade is all the coffers of Iranian oil are filled up on Karg Island. They're about to start dumping billions of dollars of oil a day. They're seizing their money inside and out. People within the IRGC and the Iranian military are not getting paid. And this is going to be huge because so I think what they're trying to do is they're either trying to pressure the civilian counterpart of the government to take over full control and come to a deal and resolution that aligns with Trump's angle and objectives, or they're trying to finish the color revolution and overthrow the IRGC power structure. Now, the key here to understand is that much of this was controlled by the remnants of the British Empire that operate through NGOs, NPOs, the rules-based liberal international order, through the London financial district, the Rothschild chains. And this is why you had a lot of Lloyd of London's parts that were playing into the Straits of Hormuz, as well as the London derivatives market. And then China is another faction of that. And China has its own deep state. This is why Trump's out there saying, hey, Xi Jinping loves what we're doing at the Straits of Hormuz. Yeah, but the elders in the CCP do not. And they're really pissed off because the elders were funded and operated and put into power by the remnants of the old British, what we call the old guard, the remnants of the old British Empire, the Rothschilds, the Sassoon family, all this. And so you have a faction of China that's supplying weapons to Iran and giving them intelligence data. But the Russian side is the interesting part, because the Russian side is Russia provided 55 logistical targets to Iran in the Middle East. And Trump didn't say a word about it. He hasn't commented on it. And within those 55 targets were the British-owned oil infrastructure in the northern forest field in Qatar, and the British and Chinese owned oil infrastructure in Iraq, of which all became force majeure, which means they cannot fulfill their contracts anymore. And what you're seeing is a dismantling of the old British imperial system's oil infrastructure in the Middle East, and a removing of their control over what's known as the Iranian terror premium. It is basically the Ayatollah can come out and say, we hate America, we kill you, and then all of a sudden oil prices skyrocket. Why? Because Lloyds of London, a 300-year-old company that is operated by the royal family, Rothschild, so forth, would skyrocket oil insurance premiums to travel through the Straits of Hormuz, which would increase the price of a barrel of oil by $5 to $15. And this is how they embezzled $33 trillion over the last 32 years through this method. And Trump ended that. So we have a lot of different parts that are coming out of this. Number one is the idea of China. I think that China is looking forward to the space-based race and moving off planet and all of this stuff. And that Xi Jinping really does want to work with Trump. And I think that they are working together in many different respects. But I think there are factions of China that are seeking to kind of still move forth in their hyper homogeny in the world. But Trump has basically neutralized that over the last 12 months through the control of oil, gas, energy, resources, and the control of the corridors of all of those important parts. People got to realize that China was getting cheap oil from 3 different legs in the world: Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. 30% of market rate was what they were purchasing oil from those 3 places. Russia is now opening, sanctions are removing for Russia, so their oil is going back onto the open market. Iran, obviously not trading any oil with anybody. Venezuela oil goes through the United States of America, and now China's paying full price for Venezuelan oil through the United States, and they'll soon be paying full price through Iranian oil once deals are made, which means that slows down China's technological AI progression and keeps the United States in competition with them.
Yeah, and they're probably looking at Yemen, who's probably going to shut down the Suez Canal. So once this kicks off, I think that's going to really, put a damper on the oil movement to all of the deep state countries in Europe and to China, who wants to take Taiwan so they can get the AI and overcome the United States with their AI system. So they're not going to have the oil to do that. So it's double. Trump is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. He's taking out the evil side of Iran, and they will have to be taken down. I spent 30 years in the Middle East. These people are savages. And Alpha. So they only know force, and the force has to eliminate them and remove them. So that's what's going to happen in Iran. And that's going to basically, in this long road to taking them down, the buildup of military, of course, is part of that, but also the financial and the taking down of the deep state and all these other countries. All these other countries that were pushing the Green New Deal, they effed around and found out about that, right? So it's happening. The United States has the most oil of any country in the world right now. We're sitting really luxurious, and we have, like you're talking about, we have Venezuela. So Venezuela was so easy to get. Cuba will be easy to get. The work we should have done in Cuba, probably, unfortunately, back during JFK's time frame, that he pushed it off. Now Trump is fixing it. So it's a lot of this stuff is getting fixed. It was broken for a long time. And it's around the world, so it's a monumental task that's happening. It's not going to happen fast. Josh has the big brains on this. I love to listen to Josh on this, but all of us are seeing this thing getting taken down, and we're fully aware of it. But convincing other people that what's happening because they want to attack Trump. You have all like we're talking about, the social media, high level people above us. I don't know how they got above us, but the social media idiots, I guess. Tucker Carlson and all that group. We crush those guys with information now, and that's. I hope people understand that, and I think they do, and they'll start to listen to the people who really have the information.
And Trump's facilitating that. Again, it goes back to there's the actual kinetic actions that are happening, which Josh articulated. This is what's going on here, which translates into this. But the other part of it is Trump has been destroying the narrative that the deep state has programmed all of us to think it's the way it operates. What's one of the things that, how many people really knew, outside of people that have been deployed to the Persian Gulf, how many people you knew where the Strait of Hormuz was, let alone what type of geopolitical or economic value that it had to the United States? Probably 1 in 1,000 when it came to Americans. And what he's shown us, because we've seen it in talking points, we've seen it weaponized against him at the same time that he used it. We only rely on it be somewhere between 1% and 3%. It's an insignificant thing in terms of the economy for us. but yet we've been told that we have to defend it. We have to have a massive presence out there. And this is what Josh was talking about. The Lloyds of London have absolutely exploited this. You had the Iran that could use the terrorism leverage over this to shut it down. And what Trump's saying is, no, look, and I mean, all those ships coming into the Gulf of America, it makes you wonder why he had changed it to the Gulf of America to begin with, because he knew it was coming down the pipeline. And he showed every American, if there's destabilization in the Middle East, it ain't going to impact us. It's not even going to impact all these other countries in the Western Hemisphere, because look, we can route all these ships over here. So he's taking away the arguments that the globalists and the military industrial complex has leveraged to create these conflicts. And it's absolutely brilliant to see him do that.
Is my mic here. Truly asymmetric warfare to the highest level. I'm listening to you guys talk through this, and I'm thinking, man, what a brilliant way to get the deep state, the cabal powers, to bring out into the open their 0 point free energy technology, because we're going to starve them of oil. Energy. We've got 300 bit. I read the U.S. Geological Survey back in the mid 90s on the Bakken oil fields in the Dakotas. 300 billion barrels of oil up there. That's just the. We're not talking Anwar. We're not talking off the coast. We're just talking there. We got hundreds of years of energy right there, and it always pissed me off. We get all this Middle Eastern conflict going on for oil, when, like Mike said, we've got more oil here than anywhere else in the world. But how do you have a multi? Again, we know that there's more than one meaning to a lot of things they've said and a lot of the things they're doing. But if you starve these people of basically the cabal structure of oil, which they can control, of that oil, then what do they got to do? They got to do something. What's the only option they have? Bring out their free energy technology, and that'll cause an exposure somewhere. I mean, I'm just speculating, but there's many ways. It's like when they were going to bomb, or they were going to detonate a nuke off the coast of Long Beach out there in 2020 or 2021, January 23rd or whatever they were doing the inauguration, and the whole plan was different than how it played out. But what I heard Trump said when that was going to happen, basically that's one of your Samson options, that if they intervened to stop Biden from stepping in and facilitating him into this presidency position, fake presidency, that they were going to detonate one of these nukes on one of those ships off the coast of Long Beach. That's obviously, that is something that changes the dynamic of everything. But with these kind of threats that they have to take extreme measures to try to survive it. Trump said there's more than one way to skin a cat. He said there's more than one way to skin this cat. He said, I'm not going to allow the loss of human life on my watch. That's the mindset that guy has. With everything they throw, there's more than one way to do this. There's multiple ways to do this, and there's ways to do it that's multifaceted to accomplish many, many objectives. So I think if we had a chance to sit inside their room, inside their round table, and listen to these discussions, I think even the four of us would be blown away of everything they have in their arsenal strategically, every angle, every vector. So that's why we know this thing's over. I mean, they have figured out everything, every move that they can make, just like a chess match. The Queen's Gambit, at some point, you drop out of respect, you just lay your queen down on the board. You got 5 to 8 to 10 moves left, and you're still going to lose. And it's an insult to continue to try to play against the master. It's a disrespectful insult, and that lives with you forever. I think the same thing here. It's just waiting till we get to the Queen's Gambit. However, the other side, they're not going to lay that queen down. They're gonna do a Hail Mary or something that's going to expose that stuff into the whole world, and there's no putting that back. So I think it's more than about just energy.
Yep, 100%. And about the energy aspect of it, yeah, we have between 124 to 240 trillion dollars worth of natural resources under our feet in the United States of America. And this is the idea where the sovereign wealth fund actually comes from, and I hope that they do move forth with more of that. But in the context of how you transition the energy infrastructure away from oil and gas, away from coal, away from Xcel Energy and all these big power plants, is I think what's going to happen is you're going to have fusion energy that's going to come out probably in the next year or two, but it's going to be so expensive that it's only going to be utilized by data centers. And so you're going to have kind of a factioning of energy to data centers from fusion and nuclear, and then the cost reduction will happen over the next 5 years of this technology. and that's when it'll slowly be integrated into commercial utilization. And then the primary energy companies will already have built out the infrastructure to bring those lines over into people's houses and put the freaking meter onto it and start charging for that. And by the way, you get charged more for nuclear than you do for coal, just so people know, in Minnesota, where we got one down the street. But I think that'll probably be a move like that until the technology becomes to the point where you can literally go get a micronuclear reactor for you and your neighbors, and it's $8,500. You order it online, you can assemble it yourself, and you just have to have a monitor come in and put the fuel in, and you just set it up, and you guys get free energy for the next 200 years with the fuel rod that's operating in it. I think that world is coming, and it's much closer than we think. And I would say within 10 years, we will have personal micro reactors, whether they're cold fusion reactors, nuclear reactors. But I think we're gonna step it before we get to the 0-point energy type of things. Mm-hmm. I think we're gonna step it up. It'll be kind of fusion and nuclear, then cold fusion, and that's kind of the cost reduction of those other two will come about. That cost reduction, and by that time, we're kind of moving out of renewable resources, and then you come into the other idea of 0-point energy. I think 0-point energy might be 20 years before disclosure for something like that, because when you start talking about 0-point energy, you're talking about a completely different dynamic of things that you can do on this planet. And right now we are all enclosed on this planet, which means that when you have something like that, it's power, that's control, and then there's also the abuse of that. We have various different religions in this world that will cut your head off or hang you from a tree simply because you do not believe the way they believe. And that's a very, very radical way of understanding the world in the context of their ideology. But here's the truth, is if they had 0-point energy, they would use that against us. There would be directed energy weapons that would be utilized against us, and the whole world would probably blow up through the removal of the mutually assured destruction. So I think the idea here is to build out infrastructure in the moon, space, around the earth, get to Mars, and start spreading humanity out to where when they begin to have the bigger perspective and the constructive narrative begins to fade away and all the control mechanisms begin to fade away, that humanity starts kind of opening up and accepting the technology as something that's usable and not a weapon to be utilized and controlled against other people. And I think that's one of the big factors, is that once we get to space, I mean, Scott, once I come down to Texas and we're going to go and we're going to get on the spaceship and we're going to go over to the moon, I mean, that's probably 5-6 years away. It's going to be relatively inexpensive. Once that happens, I mean, our whole world changes. Everything changes. We're no longer stuck here on this planet altogether. If you want to leave, you can leave, right? So I think that once we get into this level, that's when it's going to happen. But it's going to be a step level. You're going to have this kind of staggered approach to it.
There was something that was going on with the price of oil, and I think I'd mentioned this to you a few days ago, Josh. And I was trying to figure out what is going to happen with it, because it's a big deal. And I caught it by chance, and then I started looking into it to verify it, and I did. But you said something, Mike, that I was like, hey, you know what? That could possibly be it. If you show a pinch on oil and it forces people, or one of you guys said it, and it forces people to start revealing other energy sources, well, how do you even get that domino events to even start? One of the things that's going on right now is the Brent price of oil. Right now it's showing at somewhere between $105 $109 a barrel. Yeah, it's doing that. But here's the other part, is that's the reported price. Like when you go onto the devil's Google and you type in, the price per barrel, it's going to give you, we'll just say $90, right? It'll give you that price. And then we watch that one go up and down. That price is not the actual price of a barrel of oil, though. The actual price of a barrel of oil, like if there's somebody that says, hey, I want 1,000 barrels of oil on this ship right now, that price is going to be different. And historically, that difference in price is somewhere between $3 and $8. So if it's being reported at 100, that actual physical cost is going to be about $103, $108. That's where it's been, $5 and $8 in difference of price has been like the highest that we've ever seen. Right now, it's being reported between a difference of $30 and $38. So that means if it's being reported at 100, that actual price to put it on there is somewhere between, $130, $138. And what a lot of people that are talking about that are monitoring this, that's unsustainable. You can't keep doing that. And it's going to create something to happen. So I've been trying to figure out, like, what's going to happen? Trump knows about it.
It's Trump exploiting the system. The markets are fake and gay. I'm telling you, the markets are. It's fake and gay. What happens is Trump comes out.
Is that the new buzz? I just saw somebody
I
saw somebody right here in the chat say the same thing. Oh, that's fake and gay, and I'm thinking it must be the new buzz term.
It is, but think about it like this: is Trump comes out and says we're going to bomb Iran tomorrow, oil prices skyrocket. Then comes out the next day, I think we're going to send J.D. Vance to Islamabad, and we're going to talk and negotiate, and prices come down. Right? That's not supply and demand. That is the perceptionability of the market being dictated by the futures and the derivatives markets out of London and New York, who are trying to get ahead of the market because of rhetoric that is being spoken. And that's not how the free markets are supposed to operate. And he's exploiting this mere fact that this is occurring. So what he does is he says, oh, we're going to bomb Iran tomorrow. And the London brokers go out there and they start buying up all the futures markets. And the next day he's like, we're going to go to Islamabad. And what happens? They lose their ass.
The perfect example of that was, and I wish I should have saved it. Somebody created a meme out there, and it was Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. And where it's, hunting,
it's
no
a calendar.
Hunting. Yeah, but it's all
no hunting.
Straight over moose. Open. No, it's closed. Open. No, it's closed. Open. And it was showing, Trump and then Iran. And I was like, that is absolutely brilliant, because literally you follow the price of the oil. That's exactly what it's freaking doing because of the strategy that they're deploying out there.
It's forcing the new technology. I believe that's what we're seeing. And 3 to 5 years from now, we'll have the hydrogen, technology. It'll be in everybody's backyard, and then it'll progress from there. I remember a buddy of mine. He was an Indian guy, and he worked for RCA. And you remember those great big, big screens that were in cabinets and they weighed hundreds of pounds. I had one of those, and I'd like move it. When I change apartments, they're like, oh my God, I got to move it down these stairs. But he said that 20 years before the big screen plasma TVs came out, they already had them. He said they were showing them what was coming. And so, they still had, rabbit ears on TVs and stuff, but that's what they were projecting for the future. But the technology has to roll out in waves. It can't all come, like we're saying, we're 100 years advanced. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But it can start to move in that direction if we take away the deep state control system and them killing the people that are bringing this technology out. So that sucks.
And you also have to build the infrastructure.
They're like, I'm not going to expose this stuff. I'm going to die if I do. So we have to get past that point.
Yep, and you also have to build the infrastructure out. So for the technology that we're talking about right now that is coming, just AI, you have to build infrastructure. And people are like, yeah, but man, we got like copper cables and wires going. Yeah, no. A whole new infrastructure. Former General Stephen Quast in the United States Air Force talks about this a lot. Beaming energy directly down from space to Earth through rectennas and distributing that wirelessly through the ionosphere. This is what Nikola Tesla level technology is, what we're talking about in the context of how your phones will never have to be plugged in again. You won't have a little jack on the bottom because they're going to be charged by a satellite sending a signal down, because we can do that now. The X-37B has been running operations out in space, going out to various different node points around the planet and then beaming electricity back in the wave of electromagnetic waves to rectennas on the ground, and they're able to run computers and TVs and phones and charge it with this energy. Now think about a massive array the size of the moon that sits at various different points. It's collecting solar energy, and that's just transitioning it into 900 megahertz electromagnetic energy, sending it to a rectenna on the planet that goes up into a Tesla tower and then distributes that through the ionosphere to where all you have to do is like this, and you're just picking up a negative 60 decibel signal that is just like your cell signal that's charging your phone, and it's running your computer, and it's running your TV, and it's running all your devices. That's the world we're heading to very fast. I think 10 years from that.
Yeah, when that emerges, you just think again. This will probably be part of the transcendental leap you're talking about, Josh. That'll happen a lot sooner than people understand or believe it will. But when it does, and people have just a small window of experience with this kind of technology, you're thinking about what you said, copper cables, lines. You're talking about unearthing and deconstructing the entire global energy grid that's centralized with these ugly poles and wires and shit all over the country and the world. You're dismantling all that. It's got to go away, and I'm sure they'll do that in a pretty short order, more faster than we think so. But I think people will then look back just 5 or 10 years before, and they're going to realize how enslaved we were. Look, we got this vase on that. We got a vase the size of this that sits on our kitchen table over there on the counter, and it powers the whole house, powers everything around here. And this is how we had to live. Hundred and some odd years we had to live, where we had these lines coming in. If we had an emergency, then this thing dies. I had to go find somewhere in civilization to plug this in to get power. That'll piss people off so much. And I think it's that snap's going to help, or that snap and it hits their psychological sphere is going to, I think, open up everything in terms of believability and where we can and should go in the future. So it's probably as much of a psychological pendulum swinging back, smashing that old reality then to make people believe, like, holy cow, anything is possible with technology, with the universe. And I think it'll open up that, there's brilliant people all over the planet. The smartest guy in the world is probably sitting in prison and could do many things in this world because he just couldn't survive in this world, in society, socially, and they have nowhere to turn to. And these people are going to be unlocked because they're going to see like this magical world opening up, and it's going to unleash that capacity in the human species, which I think will power the trajectory of us making that transcendental leap.
Agreed.
We've had this technology before. You look at Tartaria stuff, and it's we've been advanced, but these evil ones come in and suppress us and push us down. We have to completely eliminate them. We can't be Mr. Nice Guy anymore. These people, right? So we have to throw them in the gulags or whatever. Gitmo and
there was a major.
There's only two narratives here: off with their fucking heads or death by cheese grater. One of the two. That's it.
Two major things happened. One, Josh brought one to my attention. I don't know if you brought it to my attention last night or this morning, but adopting the firing squad again in DC. So that was significant. But something even more significant than that. This is, I had a smile on my face when I saw this because I was like, now I know where we're going. Let me set some context here. We know last year, at the beginning of Trump's presidency, and we talked about this on this show, that Trump had Bondi, who I still think is not bad, Josh. But regardless, he had Bondi come out and designate the cartels as foreign terrorist groups, and that allowed him to use the Department of War to go after them. And we knew that this was big. Why? Because this is the rank and file of the international globalist deep state. But who's the rank and file of the deep state that exists here in our country? And one of those groups is the mafias and the gangs. And yesterday, the FBI, Cash came out and announced the FBI Los Angeles division did pre-dawn raids on 30 EME targets. Now, for those that don't know, EME controls all the Hispanic gangs pretty much from upper northern California, where you would argue that that's what Familia, the NF, but probably Stockton down, people would argue that's the Sedeños. The EME has control of them. And the FBI just did massive raids on them. And if you guys remember one of the conversations, I think I might have had it with you guys, or we might have had this conversation while we were hanging out one time, Scott, is if you want to get the intelligence on the ground for where the deep state's operating and all these terrorist cells that came across our border, the people that know about it are the prison gang leadership because they control the streets. The streets report to these guys. Those guys just got raided by the FBI.
Wow.
Which means the FBI has that intelligence. And so if we were worried and concerned, in which I think we are, about the terrorist element that's came into our country, we were just told yesterday that we now have intelligence on exactly where those guys are and how they're operating, because it is impossible for a terrorist organization to operate within our country without the assistance of local gangs. It won't happen. It can't happen. And so knowing that that leadership just got taken down means that those terrorist organizations have just been put on notice, if not already taken down as well.
LT, I was listening, thanks Lisa, I was listening to, she's faster than I am. I was listening to LT today, and he made a great point. People saying, where are the arrests? Where's this? Where's that? He said, when's the last time you've seen Antifa or BLM? Where have you seen any mass protests, burning people, cities down, or killing people? Where have you seen it? You don't. You don't see this anymore. Where'd they go? Where are they? They've been pinned down. They've been wiped out. Otherwise, you think that they would be going crazy right now?
Very true. Man, interesting times we live in, huh, guys?
We're just getting started, man. We're just getting started.
You know, I had come up with an assessment that I was like, we're going to start seeing. I'm not talking maybe, but I wasn't really talking about top level arrests, but just based on some of the stuff that I was seeing with law enforcement and federal side and the local side, I was like, and these RICO cases, I was like, we're probably looking at probably the next like 30, 45, 60 days. And I got off a phone call yesterday and was told, brother, 2 weeks, and start watching the arrests that are going to pop out. So hopefully,
Brennan, Fort Pierce, Florida grand jury. I'll say it.
2 weeks is quick, bro. I'm about it. I'm listen. The sooner the better.
A second. Cinco de Mayo time for you. Yeah. Just you heard it here first. Okay, I always say this. You heard it here first.
I'll say it here. You heard it here a week later. That's my specialty. I pick out the best narratives of all you guys and say that's what I'm running with. That's original.
I do have to get rolling, guys. I do have a few different things I have to go.
Not before you have to answer this question.
Sure.
All right. Let's do the fun side of this.
Sure.
So let's say it takes 4 or 5 years, whatever, and this whole thing turns on its axis, and we have this amazing, remarkable, like world and future in front of us that we get to engage. The golden age is coming. Question is, all right, Josh, you're first. Where are you going first? What planet? Why? What planet are you going to visit? And the known in our system here, which one and why?
Which one? And I'm going to Mars. I want to see for myself. I want to see the devastation. Then I'm going to the asteroid belt. I'm going to Ceresis and looking at the remnants of where we probably actually came from, which planet we actually came from that was destroyed. And we're just refugees that ended up here. But I'm leaving the entire solar system, and I'm going to go find my own planet. I'm taking my family and all the friends I can do it, if I have the money to do it. And we're getting the fuck out of Dodge, and we're going to go find our own little green planet with no intelligent life on it, and we're just going to be like, this looks like home. Because that's kind of what I want to do. I just kind of want to be left alone.
All right, Josh, that's very interesting. How did I know Josh would go so far out there that I can't even relate to that? I love it. Alpha, where are you going?
Well, I'm sticking around much more locally.
Okay.
I'm going into the mountains of Big Bear. I am going to buy a cabin, and I want an analog radio, nothing digital. I mean, I want to tune in the radio station. I want to hear the static, and I want to fish and listen to baseball. That's what I want to do.
I'm going to fish 100 light years away.
and then
you'll be catching.
And then once Josh has transmitted back enough whatever postcards look like in that golden age, and he's gotten me not to be so afraid to jettison outside the earth, then I want to go visit Sirius B, because I was told that's where I am from.
There you go.
Interesting. Mike?
Yeah, I was told it was from Sirius B too. That maybe we'll meet you out there. But we'll probably go to the planet of love, Venus, check that out, and hang out with the angels a little while, and then maybe head out to Sirius B and some of those other places we came from. So where are you from, Trace?
Heaven.
Tracy's from heaven, but I think she's Pleiadian, so we'll see.
Definitely Pleiadian, definitely. Well, I'm going to find a planet where they have a massive motorcycle community, and that's where I'm going. Ride the best bikes. And if I can't find it, I'm going to set it up right here at home.
There you go.
You want to live? You want to live on this planet? You have to own a motorcycle. It's like Kennesaw County, Georgia, the lowest crime rate in the nation. Why? Because in Kennesaw County, Georgia, you're not allowed to live there unless you own a firearm. Right? I want to make this planet. You can't live on a planet unless you got two wheels. You got to have a motorcycle. Get out.
I love it. I love it.
Guys, hey, thanks for an impromptu roundtable tonight. It's been great. I know the audience is looking forward to it. Thanks for taking the time out. Thanks for doing the hard work you guys constantly do. I know they love it. I watch the chat here. They love when we all get together. Everybody loves roundtables. So thanks for bringing it again.
Appreciate you guys.
Rico, everybody.
Yes, Rico.
See it.
It's coming. All right, folks. That's a wrap for tonight. On behalf of Josh Reed, Mike Jaco, Alpha Warrior, myself, I will say that's a wrap. Patron Street Fighter out.